how many of my Johnny 2000s viewers are boys? Because this one seems to be aimed at us. Remember when we used to feel embarrassed about being into boy bands like One Direction, 5 Seconds of Summer, but more importantly, Big Time Rush, the Naked Brothers band, and look at this, Jonas Brothers. The millennials in my life all liked Beach Boys, Beatles, NSYNC, so why were we so sensitive about not liking them? Social media was still growing at the time, so we must have been more paranoid about what we were into or how we consumed our media. And while Big Time Rush and Naked Brothers band had TV shows themselves to kind of express what the characters are going through, Jonas does the best, especially in this pilot. Growing up as a male in the 2000s, it was definitely a very different time. I feel like men were supposed to be stoic, non-emotional, and the 2000s rocked for a sensitive boy like me. Not only was Maroon 5 releasing sappy songs about breaking up, but I had Owl City to cry to. Being a young boy in the 2000s, there was definitely unspoken expectations as to how a male should act and behave in certain scenarios, especially when it comes to being sensitive, emotional, or even empathetic toward other people. For people like me that were sensitive and emotional, I didn't really have a lot of places that I could see myself. I didn't have a lot of role models to look up to. Not only was this out in the world, but you could also kind of see it in teen TV. Hannah Montana, iCarly, Victorious, these are all female-led shows because emotional characters were just seen as being played by women. I kind of want to break down the gender titles, so instead of male and female, I do want to say masculine and feminine. I feel like we all have a little bit of both. I identify as a male, but I would say I'm primarily feminine. So the more we kind of talk about those traits, I feel like the more we break out of the genders. So as somebody growing up in primarily feminine, people look down on younger kids that let their emotions kind of lead the way. For me, I believe my emotions to be an asset, so I loved them. But television was pretty similar, and something that actually went really well was tween TV. Definitely looking back now, I see that they were making content for more feminine males like myself, and I just never realized it. Shows like Ned's Declassified, Big Time Rush, they kind of covered the surface level of what it's like as a masculine person to have feelings for another person, the weaknesses, the judgment that kind of goes around it, or being in tune with your emotions. But my favorite part was when it was authentically portrayed in the best way, like Naked Brothers band, and in this instance, Jonas. I thought I was going to be ripping into Jonas. I thought this whole video would be oh my god, look at this show that failed. But I definitely think there was potential here. And with this pilot, I saw themes that I would love to have watched at that age, as there weren't a lot of viewpoints from the male perspective of giving into your emotions. The pilot of Jonas kind of does a good job at it, so let's jump into it. Now, Jonas didn't last that long. It was only 2 seasons, and the entire second season was revamped to be a drama instead of a comedy, but this first season is a little special. So we're going to dive into the first episode of Jonas, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how it became the perfect representation of the masculine experience. Okay, before we get into the episode, I'm going to have to spoil the ending for you. The girl we see, the love interest that Nick is going to have a crush on in the pilot, ends up having a boyfriend. Most of the episode, we don't actually know that, which is why all the actions Nick takes matters. We jump into the episode, and it's about Nick. Apparently, Nick never smiles, already a masculine trait for an episode. And then we get Teddy Duncan as the love interest? Crossover in the pilot! No, I'm just kidding. So Nick's crushing on this girl, and they both have music in common. Nick even insists that Penny uses their studio to record her song. Oh, her name's Penny, by the way. I love it when they have an episode where the guy is trying to impress the girl. I feel like the girl trying to impress the guy was so overdone at this point. So seeing this perspective is just so different. We get Stella and Mickey, who are super interesting because they're super fans of the Jonas Brothers, but also they're best friends and go to school with them. So they have to juggle a weird dynamic with them. It's a lot of conflict of interest, and I feel like it's interesting as an audience member to wonder what their intentions are, whether it's to actually be friends with them or take advantage of them. Joe and Kevin kind of mock Nick for being super emotional and open with Penny, but Stella seems pretty understanding, even embarrassing him in front of her, acting like they're dating. Poor Nick, so embarrassing. Joe and Kevin just want to make him look bad in front of her and tease him, which is exactly how guys would act at that age, and I don't know why we were like that. I don't know what this urge to make other guys look bad was for. Something I can't get out of my head is the power dynamic of Nick being a celebrity and Penny being a fan. Like, it's hard to tell if Nick actually likes her or if she actually likes Nick, especially knowing that she has a boyfriend and seeing how much she's crushing over him. Like, it's hard to ignore these signs. So Nick ended up writing Penny a song, which is super weird because they aren't even together. I don't know why it's always like this, and it happened in Zoe 101 too. It just seems like guys are so much more into the relationship and have expectations of commitment and to work hard for the girl before they're even together. And I feel like girls, it's the opposite. They kind of protect themselves until it's necessary to open up without those expectations up front, which kind of does make more sense to me. I wish I knew that growing up. So Nick plays her this song and she's super excited. This is why I think she likes him, because she's taken it in. And we see a little music video, Give Love a Try, which is actually a really pretty song. I can't believe I didn't appreciate it back then. We meet the dad at the JoBros house, and it's just way too bachelor pad vibes. Like, they're acting all like stereotypical guys. Like, maybe because Nick is emotional and they have to emphasize it, but it's still weird when the dad says he was with 23 women before his mother. Like, why do we need to hear that? I hope that's not an anecdote from the real JoBros father. If I had a nickel for every time in real life I've had a crush on someone and I could swear they liked me back, gave me all the signs, when really the person is just either being nice to you or already has a boyfriend, like, it's kind of heartbreaking, because from my perspective, girls don't really have to deal with that as much as guys, so they don't really think things through when it comes to this. It's completely different worlds, and I'm not going to pretend like I know the girl side of that. I do think the message across both genders is that it's important to be empathetic, and that rejection is just as important, if not more life-changing, than actually getting a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Like, it reminds you that your independence and the things you're passionate about are not meant to just be given away to another person, whether it's to get something out of it, like a relationship, or a song. It's about growing and spending more time with people that interest you or challenge you. And if we didn't have titles like relationships or dating, or it might have been a lot easier to kind of bring that out. I feel bad though, because Nick's brothers are really annoying. It's hard to relate to Joe and Kevin, who don't care what other people think of them. So the brothers go in disguise to see Penny sing, and she ends up singing the song Nick wrote for her. And they're all like, oh my god, she stole it, giving them a bad impression of Penny immediately. Moral of the story, don't do something good and respect something in return. What Nick does was thoughtful, but I feel like inadvertently he was expecting a relationship, and that was kind of on him. Like, she doesn't owe that to him, especially since she's painted as the villain because she has a boyfriend. Like, she never technically committed to him, and even though it looked like she was, like, I feel like it was very well communicated that they were not in a relationship. I just don't like the common notion that just because a guy does something for a girl means that she is supposed to like him and she looks like a villain if she doesn't. So it's always good to kind of vet people in your life and make sure somebody isn't giving you too much that you're not giving the same amount of effort back. And I think that has to do with friendships, relationships, and everything. As guys, and particularly Nick in this scenario, it's very hard to be vulnerable, and especially with the fear that you may never open up again if it doesn't work out. And that's cool that that's Nick's journey, because it's very authentic and flawed, but it's still not over. Nick tries to tell her he wrote the song for her, not for her to sing, but he can't. He ends up letting her use their studio and gets in deeper. Finally, when they're in there trying to record the song, he realizes he can't do it. He's been repressing his emotions, and he does have ulterior motives and can't honestly go through with this with that in mind. The guys give him a talk and aren't super helpful, but it is definitely the male experience to talk about this with your friends. And even though he feels rejected, he makes an open and honest communication with her that he was expecting something in return, and he didn't mean to fall so hard, and he learned that when she had a boyfriend. And this is where it gets weird for me. She basically is like, he didn't like the song, so I broke up with him, so I'm available to date. Like, you just got out of a relationship, girl. Like Teddy, or Penny, I guess, weirdly similar names, just dedicated the song and called him her soulmate. And when she didn't get that in return, she broke up with him. So it's clear that she just dumped her boyfriend because she knew Nick wrote her a song. And I kind of lose respect for her, and I lose kind of the message of the episode that just because you do something nice for somebody doesn't mean you expect something in return. Like, she just inevitably gives him what he expects. I wish that she was one of the main characters on the show, because it would be a lot more meaningful as the show progressed. But it's kind of episodic, so it ends here. They end up recording together, and I don't get it. All around, communication needs to be prioritized and needs to take a lot more consideration when you're dealing with people that are more different than you, with different backgrounds, with different different genders. Like, you just need to think a little bit harder and make sure you're always putting out the same energy somebody's putting out for you. And remember that relationships aren't always everything, but you can learn about yourself and other people when you're empathetic toward how they act, despite what you believe is proper communication. Something I really like about it is just the constant berating of other characters, trying to figure out how Nick is feeling, as if it's so important to somehow control these feelings and or not let it affect your actions. And Nick does a classic masculine trait where they kind of repress emotional conversations. I like that they're goofy and wacky because that is kind of what it was like growing up. Like, if you talked about feelings, it was funny. It was in a joking way. So it felt really good to feel like I could relate to Nick on screen, especially in a way that I don't think I got when I was growing up back then. I know this show isn't super popular, but I do kind of hope that some younger males today stumble upon it, because there's more pride in your feminine traits than there ever has been, which is an awesome reality we're living in. I do think it partially has to do with all these tween shows giving us the female perspective and like being pro emotions. And I didn't realize there were some hidden gems in there. So as the younger generations find their footing in feelings, in gender, and even their femininity versus their masculinity, I really hope they stumble upon this episode of Jonas. Like, it did a good job. Well, what did you guys think of the pilot? Do you agree with me? Did you ever grow up being told that like feelings were kind of a weakness and or more of a negative trait than good? The best part of this pilot, though, is that it empathizes with the audience so well. I personally could feel the hurt for Nick as somebody who kind of keeps the emotions on the underskin and then gets rejected. Because getting to know people is really hard, especially when it's out of your comfort zone and you're insecure about how masculine or feminine you come across. But here I really felt heard. I felt like there was another person that gave into his emotions, that got rejected by other people. But I'm glad that we weren't just seeing like a girl rejecting a bunch of guys like we do in a lot of TV shows. We were seeing a male character dealing with himself in a relationship situation and his own emotions. They were pretty real and authentic when talking about it. I don't know, it just made me feel like I had another piece of content that was like, hey, this is how I felt at that age. And it wasn't condescending, it was very much like honest to Nick wanting to be with this girl and how blind it kind of makes people. But yeah, I was really happy with it. If you wanted to see other shows and or wanted me to cover other shows, I know the Naked Brothers Band does a really good job at tackling this too. But props to Disney for making a really unique Disney Channel show. And even though it was just a boy band and didn't really go anywhere, and some would say inferior to the other shows, there was some really good that came out of this one. Topics that Ned's Declassified, Big Time Rush, Zeke and Luther didn't have time to get into. And as media evolves and we see more perspectives, it improves our empathy. I made a musical a while ago called Authenticity, and it was kind of about being too emotional and trying to fit in and how kind of technology interferes with that. You guys can look it up. It's called Authenticity, the musical. And that's kind of how I felt when I was watching this. I felt like I was seeing somebody that felt like they were being really emotional and society turning back to that. But what did you guys think? Do you feel like it gave a positive impact, or do you think it was a little too controversial? I don't know. This is my opinion. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Johnny 2000, and I will see you guys next time.